This is a presentation on how regulations and rules for works, buildings and construction products in the EU relate to standards. I am Chris Hamans from ESC, the European Sustainability Consulting. Both the EU and its member states work with regulations, rules and directives. This regulatory field is clearly separated from standardization. The rules of member states require that construction works are designed and executed in such a way that they do not endanger the safety of persons, property, nor damage the environment. Those rules have direct influence on the requirements of construction products. Those requirements are consequently reflected in national product standards, national technical approvals, and other national technical specifications related to construction products. Due to their disparity, those requirements hinder trade within the Union. Let's take the Construction Product Regulation, the CPR. This Construction Product Regulation lays down basic requirements for construction works. A member state has to fulfill these basic requirements for construction works. However, it's the member state who decide whether they have a need for such product information. For example, the CPR defines a basic work requirement on the energy performance of buildings in the Basic Work Requirement number 6. Member states therefore have rules and regulations for the energy performance of their buildings. Rules, for instance, on the level of air tightness that the building has to meet, its thermal inertia, and on the energy efficiency. For calculating the energy efficiency, the thermal resistance R of construction products is an essential product characteristic. If now each member state defines its own methodology for measuring and calculating the thermal resistance for the declaration, they create a problem for our common European market. Different methodologies for measuring that performance create a technical barrier to trade for these construction products. The removal of technical barriers is achieved by establishment of harmonized technical specifications for the purpose of assessing the performance of construction products. The European Commission then mandates the European Committee for Standardization, CEN, to produce harmonized product standards. The basic requirements in the Annex 1 of the CPR constitute the basis for preparation of standardization mandates and harmonized technical specifications. The essential characteristics of construction products shall be laid down in those harmonized technical specifications in relation to the basic requirements for construction works. For instance, in a product standard for thermal insulation products. The harmonized standard defines the essential characteristics and assigns the methodology for measuring or calculating the characteristic. In the example, it's the declared thermal resistance RT for the entire product family of insulation products. In the example, the thermal resistance is measured and declared in the same way and can be communicated by the manufacturer in all member states. There is no barrier to trade. What now if one or more member states consider that the declaration of performance of a construction product should be accompanied by another information on the emission of hazardous substances from the product? For instance, the emission of VOCs that clearly relate to the Basic Work Requirement number 3, hygiene, health and environment. Then the declaration of VOC emissions is considered to be an essential characteristic. The same procedure as described before applies. The mandate given to the CEN product TC is revised and extended with a specification for delivering one or more indicators and assignment of the appropriate methodology standards. The methodology for quantification of the emissions is defined in the standards elaborated by CEN TC 351. Once the indicators and the methodology is defined for quantifying the essential characteristic VOCs, the TC for the harmonized product standard can decide assigning the relevant TC 351 standards. The Commission will assess the conformity of standards with the relevant mandates, and if approved, the essential characteristics are included in the Annex ZA of the standard. The characteristics included in the Annex ZA are the legal basis for declaring and acceptance of the particular product performance. What about environmental product performances? They are as well an essential characteristic that, meanwhile by some member states, is related to the basic work requirements. Global warming, expressed in carbon dioxide equivalent, is related to the basic work requirement number 3, hygiene, health and environment. Another environmental characteristic is the energy related to the product over its life cycle and the use of natural resources, for instance expressed with an indicator ADP, abiotic depletion. All these environmental indicators can be related to the basic work requirements, and demanding information on how much construction products contribute to the performance, the environmental performance of the building, makes them also an essential product characteristic. The CEN Standardization Committee, the Technical Committee TC 350, have defined a whole set of environmental indicators for this use. The CEN TC 350 standards are so-called horizontal standards. The standards are applicable to all construction products. The standard EN 15804 offers a list of more than 20 environmental indicators that allow quantification of the necessary product characteristics. It's now to the European Commission to revise the mandate for the product TCs and invite them to implement the necessary indicators in the harmonized product standard. However, it's also important that other rules, directives or regulations that require the declaration of environmental performance use the same system of declaration. It is important to avoid barriers to trade, but also that a single assessment of a product performance is guaranteed to the market. Using the same and uniform environmental product characteristics is helping users and consumers to understand the communication of environmental performances, and for manufacturers and customers it will minimize the extra administrative burden. As an example, the Working Plan 2012-2014 of the Ecodesign Directive 2009/125 for energy-related products is proposing to include also a number of construction products. The objective of the directive is to set minimum environmental performance requirements for defined construction products. In order to cut off the lower end of the market for these products, the lowest environmental performance in a product family, products that do not reach a minimum environmental performance, will have no longer access to the market. The CE mark cannot be applied on those lowest performing products in a product category. However, this is a difficult and delicate process applying this principle to construction products. Construction products are no end-use products for which originally the Ecodesign Directive was made. However, if an acceptable methodology is found, and for instance a threshold value is to be set for the product for global warming, then the environmental product performance should be assessed using the same declaration. Member States, but also the European Commission by delegated act, could set such threshold values as minimum performance for the product. Not only on global warming, but for instance also on energy performance. But if so, then it's important that the same declaration is used. Legislative instruments like regulations and directives should not be overlapping and not be contradicting. They also should ensure that single assessment is possible and that communication of building or product performance to the market is clear. It should provide a non-confusing message to the decision makers and end consumers. Standards play an important role to achieve this. If you have questions or remarks, please contact me at esc@hamans.com.